Hello everyone, welcome back to my Python UI application series. In this video I will show you how to connect your Python application with database. I will be using SQLite database because it's the most easiest at least for me for using, at least at simple projects or small projects. If you don't have any experience with SQL and databases, I will suggest you that you check it out. At least look at this, look through this webpage, SQLite It has really great and short explanation of everything. And down here in the bottom you have also SQLite for Python, where you can see the usage in Python, which I will explain, but not in details as it's explained in this website. So we could just import our SQLite in our application and call it from functions, but I think it's better that we create separate class and we then instantiate object of that class in our application. So I will suggest that you also have some knowledge about object-oriented programming. Is really simple in Python, and I won't be using any advanced performance. You only have to know what constructor is and how to instantiate an object. So let's start. First you have to import SQLite 3, and then we can create our class. I'll call it SQLite helper, and then I will define my constructor and self, and we need name. This will be name of our database, and then we will write as self.connection, short con, is equal to none, and I'll also set default of name to none. So if our class is instantiate wrong, it will have no name, so it will just print an error. And then we have self.cursor, which will be used for manipulating data. I'll also set it to none. Now I will check if name, so if name was set, then self.open, so I will open connection to database with name which was passed to our constructor. So another thing in SQLite, when you create class like this, like we created in constructor, I'll call open, and in open we will establish a connection, and if this database doesn't exist already, SQLite will create new database with this name. So when you will be creating an application, let's say, and you want to move this application to different directory, and you forgot database in previous directory, in new directory another database, new database will be created. So keep that in mind, so you won't have problems with debugging it. So now we have to define our open function, which will also take self and name, because we need to know which database we want to open. And here we will make a try except block, because we need to try if a connection will be established. If not, we will print an error. So self.connection is equal to SQLite 3.connect, and we want to connect it to a database with name of name, which was passed in the constructor right here. Okay, and we also want to set a cursor. So cursor is equal to self.con.cursor, like this, and then we have to add except, and here we will type SQLite 3.error, SE semicolon, and here we will print our error. We could print our error which is saved in this variable, or you could just print let's say failed connecting to database. It doesn't really matter. This is just user to know what went wrong. And while you will be debugging your code, you should print your E variable right here. So this is it. We can also print our version of database right here. So we will make sure that it's everything working. Let's say version, and of course we have to instantiate our object. So let's say test is equal to SQLite helper, and here I have to pass the name of our database. But first I'll save my file. I already have it, so I will just overwrite. Yes, and I think I have database. Okay, I will delete this database which I created previously, and I will type here, let's say test.database. You can see I don't have any database here. I will save it, and now we will run this. Hopefully we will go through without any errors. Okay, our version of SQL is printed, and as you can see our database is created right here. So we can check this database with a database program. I think I have one. Yes, database browser for SQLite. You can download it from internet. It's really simple, but for a project like this, those are really small, and you just want to check if everything is alright, is pretty useful. So you can open database and go to directory you created for database, YouTube tutorials number 7. Right here is our test, and here you can see we have no tables so far. Again, you should look into some basics of databases, so you will know that databases have tables which can be connected, and the table needs a primary key to connect to another table which will have foreign key of this table, and so on and so on. I don't know how deeply I will learn this SQLite in my channel, but we will see. Now are just the basics. So next thing we need is actually create our table. We could do that in this program, which I just closed. I hope it's still opened, my database. No, I have to open it again. Okay, so if I open database again, you can see that I can create table right here and then just write column names and check data types and so on. But I want to show you how to create it from the class, because you will probably need that later. So define, let's say, create table, and here I will pass self. We could do a function which would be used for different tables, but I will hard code it. What I meant with different tables, you could pass in parameters like table name and column 1 and column 2, but since you don't know how many columns and which types would it be, and there would be a lot of errors, I think for beginners it's much better to just hard code it so you can understand what we will be doing. So first we have to declare our cursor. I'll save it to variable c, and then self.cursor. This is just so we don't have to type this long line, if we will need that later in this function. So c.execute, and we will execute SQL code. If you type triple quotation marks in, I think those are quotation marks, I'm not sure. Anyway, you can write in more than one line. So this is very useful for SQL statements, since you can have like select statement which can be, I don't know, 10 lines long, so it's more readable. And so we have to create table, and this is special syntax, create table, and then name of table we want to create. In this case we could pass it right here, name, and I would add here plus and add that variable name, but I'll just type it here users. As I previously said, I will hard code it, and then here we will pass our columns. And for user, we often want name, age, surname, address, and phone number, and so on. But in databases, you also need a primary key, an identification, some attribute that will be unique for each input, for each row that will be input in our table. So I will call it ID, and I will set it to integer, and I will set it as primary key. You should really look into this more detail, so you will understand what I'm talking about. If you want a series about SQL, you can write it in comments. I'll try to create it. And we also want auto increment. This means that we don't have to, while we will be inserting new user, we won't have to count our ID, but when we will create new user, ID of previous user will be incremented for 1. I hope that makes sense. We will also add name of text, and if you have experience with SQL, you probably think that here we would have to type varchar or something like that, but this is SQLite, and before you use it, please look into documentation and look which data types it supports, because it can be really annoying when you don't know what you screwed up while programming. So name, I set text. You can also set it not null, so it means that it is required. And we can also add, let's say, year, in which year user was born. We could use date types for this, but I'm not sure which are supported by SQLite, so I'll just add it as integer. And we will also add admin. Those probably aren't making any sense, but we are just doing this for learning purposes. So you will know how to manipulate different types of data. So admin, it can be admin or it won't be an admin, so it's a boolean, true or false. But in SQLite there is no boolean, so we can replace boolean by integer, and let's say for admin it would be 1, and for not admin, for regular user, it will be 0. So here we have admin, and I think this is enough for this table, and we can try if it works. So here we create our object, and if we want to call any function of specific object in Python, we just type name of our object and then dot create and name of our function, so create table. And here we would type name of our table if we would create some more extensible function, but anyway, I'll just create table, save it, and run it, hopefully with no errors. Again, our version, and I do have an error. Is it without space? I'm not sure really. Okay, I guess it's without space. So now we created our table, I guess we have no output, so we don't know what we created. So for this, it's actually useful to have a program like this browser for SQLite, so we can check what we created. Okay, so again, open database. It would be so much faster if I wouldn't close it every single time. So YouTube tutorials number 7 and our testing database. And as you can see, we have two tables. We have two tables because in this table are saved our IDs, so the SQLite know when it has to increase a number of ID. This is actually not good often because it takes a lot of memory and CPU time. I will show you in later episodes how it can be approved, but let's leave it as it is for now. So if you go here and browse data, you can see that, oops, we have to check the right table. Oh, right here, okay. We can see that there is no users in our database. So we have to create another method or function right here, which will create or insert data into our in our database. But we also need a function which will edit data. We can again do a function that will be very extensible and create a, let's say, insert, and here I will write self, and here I will type data that will be inserted and condition when data will be inserted, and those two would have to be lists, and it would be really complicated. So I'll just type self and query, and here I will type, instead of insert, just edit, and this function will be also for insert statement and for update statement. So we need to again declare our cursor. So c is equal to self dot cursor and c dot execute our query. Okay, and I think this is it. And also we need to get data from database, so define select, and again the same as the previous one, self query, and here again c is equal to self dot cursor and c dot execute query, and then we have to type then we have to declare new variable rows is equal to cursor dot fetch all, and in this case all data from database will be fetched in rows. I will show you how to put it in data grid view or list view or something else. So another really useful function is fetch1, which can be used when you know that in query with specific condition will return only one row, or for example if you want to have first, you would also say fetch1, and even though SQL would return many rows, fetch1 will just grab one row. I will show usage of those later. So now we have for insert and update, and here we have for select. Okay, so now we can try to insert new user. So test dot insert, and here we have to type insert into name of table, so users, and here name of our columns. So we want to insert name, year and admin, because ID will be inserted automatically. and here values for those columns. Make sure that you use those quotation marks. Here name will be, let's say, John, and year would be, is it integer? Yes, it's integer, so let's say 1992, and admin will be false, so 0. So this is it. This should work. We can comment this create table because we already created table. So let's try and run this, hopefully with no errors. Of course there is an error. Insert, something is wrong with insert. Yeah, we don't insert, we add it. Okay, this time no errors. Can we refresh? I don't know, it doesn't work, or I have to open it again. Oh, we didn't commit it. I forgot a really important part. We always have to commit our changes. So if I type self.con.commit and run that again, and if I refresh, yeah, we have a insert. We have to commit our data, so it means it actually applies to our database. So I believe it also needed to be here. We will see that later. So we have our first row inserted right here. So now we will select our data. So I will comment this insert and type test.select, select, and query would be select all. Star is symbol for all. Columns from table name is so users. Yeah, just that, and we will print that out, so we will see in which format it is, like this, and F5 for run, and we have an error. Execute, we misspelled it. Execute with E. Run again. None. Okay, something doesn't work. I mean, we have data in here, so that means that we successfully insert it, but we didn't select it successfully. So let's see. Row.fetch all. Oh, I know what's wrong. We should we don't have to commit it because we're just getting data, but we have to return it. We actually return data, so we return rows. We actually don't need a rows is equal to, but we just need return c.fetch all. Let's try it now. Yeah, now we have our list with, I believe it's tuple of different columns. So now if you want to, let's say, print only name, you can type something like this, yeah, John. So as you can see, you need some knowledge from basic Python's lists and tuples. So this is it for select. Now we could try to update our user. So let's say that we mistakenly inserted John, but we wanted to insert Jack. So what we want is we want to add it, and again another SQL statement. So update table name, and then set a name of column. So name is equal, I think name is equal to Jack, where name is equal to, oh, we have to set those right here, where name is equal to John. This I think so, but yeah, no, I'm wrong. We should do that not in print because we don't return anything. So I'll copy this out, paste it right here, and then I'll delete this and set our select statement again. Select all from users, and I want everything, not just name. I forgot. And instead of edit, we want here a select, like this, and start. And yes, we have Jack. So we successfully changed our name to Jack. So this is it for basic SQLite helper, and in next video I will show you how to connect everything we learned right here into our UI application. So stay tuned, and I will see you in my next video.